Hi guys, welcome back to the Mighty Miss Malone. We left Deza, our main character, on the last day of school, the last assignment of the year. She did not get the best score on the assignment in the class, and she normally does. Her best friend, Clarice, got the best grade on that assignment, and Deza was trying to understand her two brains and how they were thinking differently. Just before that chapter, Deza and her brother went to return the pie tin to the pie maker, where the brother stole the pie from. And now we're gonna start on chapter 5. Maid of the Mist. I didn't even hear the bell ring or notice that my horrid classmates were gone. I could feel Clarice rubbing my shoulder. Mrs. Needham called from way, way off. Miss Johnson, wait outside. Miss Malone, sit up. Are you all right? I wanted to say, other than having my life destroyed by your A-, I'm fine, thank you. But I raised my head. No, ma'am. What did you think about my comments? I sniffled, smoothed my essay on my desk, and looked down to see what she'd written. We have discussed this many, many times before, Miss Malone. In the future, give your thesaurus a break. One more session like this, and your poor book will burst into flame. And that poor book will burst into flames. Good writing is simple and communicates naturally. Your past work has shown this is something you can easily do. I appreciate that you are not digressing as much. As for this essay, when I ask for 2 pages, that is all I will accept. I'm aware how upsetting this will be. A point is being made, and this shouldn't be a complete surprise. This will be the most important paper you have ever written. Please see me after class. Mrs. Needham said, Well? I wiped my eyes on the back of my hand. You said this is the most important paper I've ever written. Depending on how you react, I believe it could be. I looked at the red minus sign that looked like a tiny bloody slash cut into my work and my soul by a razor of hate. But I worked so long and hard. Why did I get an A-? Deza, come here. This day was getting stranger and stranger. She had never called any of us by our first name. Mrs. Needham sat at Benny Cobb's desk. Have a seat, Deza. I started to sit next to her, but she said, No, there, and pointed at the chair behind her desk. Really? Miss Malone, sit. The old saying that every cloud has a silver lining is true. I'd pretended a million times that I was sitting here and giving my unappreciative, hard-headed students a lesson. I had even lifted buckets of rocks at home a couple of times with Jimmy to build muscles so I could call Dolly Peaches and Benny Cobb to the front of the class, then mercilessly beat them into bloody pulps with a yardstick for embarrassing and bullying their classmates and not trying hard enough on their work. I'd imagine that many years from now I'd pick one of my favorite students, maybe it would be Clarice's daughter, to work on a problem on the blackboard. Before I move on, this took place during the Great Depression in America's history. This was several decades ago, and school was a bit different. If you misbehaved, teachers could basically give you spankings with rulers or books and things. They basically disciplined you like a parent might, and also it was formal for teachers to refer to students by their last name. So just a little background knowledge there. The chair had burgundy leather and buttons and was cool and smooth on the back of my legs. I looked at the classroom and forgot all about that red grade. Well, I pretty much forgot. Mrs. Needham said, I know being a teacher is your ambition, Deza, and a fine one, is it? It is. but I can see you as a professor, or, if we can pry the dictionary out of your hands, even as a writer." I wiggled in the chair and swiveled from side to side. Only the tips of my toes were touching the floor, but it felt perfect. "Deza, I have been teaching you longer than you could imagine, and I've always had the dream any teacher worth her salt has. I had thought prior to this year that I would have to be satisfied in coming close to the dream once before, alas. The best laid schemes of the mice and men gang aftegly. The dream is the gift of having one student, just one, who is capable of making a real contribution. One child who'd have no choice but to make a difference for people. Out of the thousands of students I've had, in the thousands of years I've been teaching, I've suspected for quite a while who the child I've been waiting for is." All I could think was, "I love her like a sister, but please just don't say Clarice." "Miss Malone, you are that child." I stopped wiggling. "That's why I gave you an A-, Deza. And it won't be the last if you're not up to your P's and Q's. Any more grandstanding in your writing, there might even be a B or two down the road. Remember, much is required of her to whom much has been given." My heart flew like a rocket ship. "These are trying times for the whole country, Miss Malone, and I'm aware that you have been dealt a pretty rough hand, but child, with your gifts, you are the richest person I have ever had the honor of teaching. I believe from the bottom of my heart that if we lose you, we've lost this country. If we can't get you to your true path, it's the failure of everyone from President Roosevelt right down to me. And while President Roosevelt is far too busy to give a hoot, I have nothing but time on my hands, and I will not sit idly by and see you fall. I understand that you are the reason I've taught for all these years. We are both in the right spot at the right time." Goosebumps danced all over my arms. "Oh, Mrs. Needham, I can do whatever needs to be done. Jimmy's always saying if I read one more book or study one more minute, my brain will explode out of my eyes. But I can work harder. Your words are like manna produced from heaven to me." I hope I pronounced manna the right way. Mrs. Needham's eyes rolled. "Oh, for the love of Pete, the first thing I have to do is wrench that dictionary and thesaurus right out of your hands. And we're going to have to work on the way you react to bad news. You have to toughen up, Missy, but we'll get by." "Yes, ma'am." "As you know, the board is forcing me to retire this year, so what I'd like to do is have you come to my home every day after school and weekends for private tutoring. The work here is not challenging enough for you, but I'll take care of that." It was like she was reading my mind when she said, "We'll include Clarice if you'd like." Mrs. Needham almost smiled. My eyes swelled up with tears. I wanted to run around the desk and give her a hug, but she looked like she'd eaten a piece of bad fish when Clarice hugged her. "Oh, thank you. Clarice will be just as happy as I am. But could I ask you, what does the thing you said earlier about gangs mean?" "Gangs? Oh, it was Gangaft Agley. It's from Burns, my favorite Scottish poet. We'll be studying him later. The poem is called To a Mouse." Mrs. Needham closed her eyes. "The best laid schemes, O mice and men, gang aftagly, and leave us naught but grief and pain for promised joy." I did not understand a bit of it. Mrs. Needham said, "Mr. Burns wrote this after plowing the fields and accidentally destroyed a mouse's nest. He tells the mouse that even though its home is ruined, it's still better off than most humans because the mouse only looks at the present, while people look to the past and end up being sad or look to the future and end up worrying. No matter how well a mouse or a human being plans for the future? Those plans, Gangaf Dagley. In other words, no matter how well you think something through, many times schemes simply will not work out. They will go astray. I already know this, but I could never have said it like a poem. This sounded like something Father would say. By the way, a former student of mine is graduating from Mahari Dental School and plans on returning to Gary. I have prevailed upon him to take you on in September once he's officially a dentist and starts practicing. A dentist, but my teeth don't bother me. Not too much. Mrs. Needham looked at me, long enough to make me a little nervous. A thorough checkup won't hurt. I wondered how she knew that my teeth can be a little sore some of the time, especially the back ones that are all hollowed out by cavities. She'd said this new dentist was just starting to practice. I'd rather wait until he started working for real, but I said, "Thank you very much, ma'am." "You're quite welcome, Deza. Now open the right bottom drawer of my desk and remove the bag, please." I put a crumply brown paper sack on her desk. "Take out what's inside, please." Inside the bag, there was a beautiful pair of new patent leather shoes and some folded up clothes. My mother says it's rude to set shoes on anything but the floor, so that's where I put them. "Do you wear a size 5? "I'm not sure." "Try them on." I picked up the first shoe. There were some socks rolled up in it. Should I put the socks on too? Yes. I was glad I was behind her desk and she couldn't see my shoes and socks. My shoes are quite tired and my socks have been darned a million times. Jimmy says our socks and clothes are very religious because they are so holy. My hands were shaking, but I pulled the new socks on and slipped my feet into the shoes. I knew just how Cinderella felt. They were a little big, but maybe that was because mine were so tight. I sat on my socks so Mrs. Needham wouldn't see them. She said my niece from Cleveland spent the summer with me a while ago and left a few things. I thought they might fit you. Did Mrs. Needham really mean these shoes were for me? I walked out from behind the desk so she could see her niece's shoes. I'd never felt this tall. The right hand heel on my old shoes had fallen off. Jimmy tried to put it back on, but it wouldn't stay. He ended up pulling the left heel off so that I wouldn't walk with a limp. Mrs. Needham said, "What do you think?" I've never seen such a beautiful pair of shoes, not even in a store window. Are you really going to let me have these? They may as well be put to good use. I'm going to save them until 7th grade. You don't need to save them. My niece left a few pair of shoes, and I'll give them to you as needed. Take them off and ask your parents if it's all right for you to accept them. Yes, ma'am. This horrible day was turning out to be the best day that anybody ever had. Empty the bag, Miss Malone. I pulled out 2 brand new half slips and 3 pairs of blue underpants. The last thing I pulled out was even more beautiful and special than the shoes. I read this book about a place called Niagara Falls, which is a waterfall geologically located between the United States and Canada. The last thing in the bag made me think of it. The book said you could ride on a boat called the Maid of Mist right underneath these huge waterfalls and get covered with a cool mist of water that the water made when it splashed on the rocks. The last thing in the bag was just like the mist. It was lovely. It was blue. It was a gingham dress. I ran my hand over the dress. This was what it must feel like to ride on the Maid of Mist under the falls. We're going to have to stop here and continue in part 2 of chapter 5. Thanks.